And Ashley, here we are back in the studio. When we were last here on the air Friday night, we were showing the imagery of Mike Pence and assorted U.S. senators separated by just a few feet from caged humans behind a chain link fence. More people than could ever sleep on that amount of floor space. And people who voiced various complaints to our colleagues who were pool reporters for the event. Here we are tonight. Donald Trump is using the old go back to where you came from. I heard someone tonight speaking cynically saying at least this streamlines the upcoming election choice. This leaves no question who you're voting to reelect or not.
Well, this certainly offers a very clear glimpse into the sort of campaign that President Trump is planning to run for re-election, which is, as far as we've seen, sort of stoking racial animus across the nation. And it's fascinating because you talk to his campaign, you talk to people in his world advisors, and they claim they're trying to expand the map into places like Oregon and New Mexico. They claim they're actually serious about building coalitions to make inroads in inner cities, in African-American communities, in Hispanic communities. But then you look at not just where the president is traveling, but what he is saying and what he is doing. And it is very clear that so far, at least, he is running on a base enthusiasm and retention strategy, which in a lot of ways does involve this red meat, these controversial statements and these racist statements. And one thing that people don't entirely understand is if you've ever gone to a Trump rally and you've interviewed his supporters and his base, they are 100% with him. And they're the sort of people who would probably vote for him even if he hadn't come out and sent these racist tweets. And so it doesn't necessarily make sense when you realize to win a re-election, you have to get to 50+1. But that is right now the strategy that the president is running.
Aaron, how do we think that inner city approach is going to work?
Well, I do think that, again, I would say that racism is on the ballot, especially for Democrats and Democrats of color in particular. President Trump's rhetoric and some of the policies that we've seen, with regard to race that are affecting communities of color are galvanizing a lot of these communities. And so I think that while, yes, it certainly is something that's going to energize his base, it also has the potential to energize a lot of Democrats who want to reject this version of America and say that, this is not who we are. And, we'll be possibly coming out to vote against this as much as they're voting for anything headed into next year.
And Annie, let's try to be clear and transparent here. We try to call out shiny objects whenever we can. This was more than that. But what this has done tonight is knock the story about changing the asylum rules at our southern border out of the top tier of news stories we're covering tonight. Sometimes things are what they look like directly, and they don't require reflection. Is this, Annie, what it appears to be, that they're going to double down on a strategy of fear?
I think that's right. Donald Trump it's more than a dog whistle. He has made clear what kind of campaign he wants to run. I heard a mix today that from inside the White House there was some disappointment that he had stepped on this intra-party feud between Nancy Pelosi and the so-called squad. But then there was another group of people associated with the campaign who said, this is helpful, having Pelosi and having other Democrats defending the far left of their party is right where Trump wants them, because it's going to be a race against socialism, pinning them all to these policies of Omar and Ocasio-Cortez and Democrats who are not even on the ballot. This is who Trump wants. These four women of color, progressives, are who Trump wants the Democratic Party to be associated with. These are women who the campaign was distributing a poll that was done that showed Omar's favorability among voters that Trump is trying to appeal to very low in states that matter, like Wisconsin and Pennsylvania. So this is a divisive fight that he wants. that he thinks is a winning strategy, and he's in the thick of an election season right now.
Hey there, I'm Chris Hayes from MSNBC. Thanks for watching MSNBC on YouTube. If you want to keep up to date with the videos we're putting out, you can click subscribe just below me or click over on this list to see lots of other great videos.